Hi, my name is Elizabeth McPherson, and I would like to introduce myself to you. So, some things about myself. I am a military spouse. My husband has been active duty Army for about 13 years. We've been at four different duty stations in three different states. So, we're here at Fort Riley, Kansas now. We have a 5-year-old daughter. Her name is Violet. She is in kindergarten, and she likes to now say she's in first grade because she thinks school is over, but she's in kindergarten. On the bottom left, those are some of my friends in Florida. We like to all fly to a common place, hop in a rental car, and drive around, see what we can do. It's just good to have good people in your life. So, I have been a teacher for 10 years. I have a math and special education degree. I started my career teaching math and transitioned into special education. The bottom kind of middle picture there is a picture of my students in Florida on graduation day. Just think it's such a cool and important thing to kind of understand what we're striving for as teachers, to know that our ultimate goal is to get them to that stage, to that graduation point, to kind of go into their life, into adulthood, feeling equipped and empowered and educated. And so I just think graduation is such a cool moment for kids. Um, some things that I like. I really like caffeine. I drink a lot of caffeine. My paraeducators in my room laugh at me sometimes. I enjoy baking. Just the other day on Pie Day, March 14th, I made a Pie Day pie. I enjoy wearing silly socks, things with funny sayings, and donuts are one of my favorite foods. So those are my donut socks that I really love. We do a lot of home projects at our house. My daughter Violet likes to draw things up for us, and we try to build desks and chairs and tables, and we just kind of have a good time doing home projects. And I recently taken up racing, so I really enjoy half marathons. I've done the Army 10 miler now a couple of times. My goal for 2020 was to run 20 races in the year, but the virus is not helping me because a lot of races are getting canceled, unfortunately. So that's a little bit about who I am, what I like, what I do. Um, my professional background, I started out with my bachelor's in mathematics. I kind of realized quickly that the pure mathematics field maybe wasn't where I wanted to head, so I finished and got my secondary license to teach 6 through 12 math, and I absolutely loved it. I ended up just immediately going and getting my special education license too because I got in the classroom and just realized how much I loved those kiddos on the edge, those kiddos that needed the extra help. So I started my career at Christian Heritage Academy in Minnesota, small private school. I did 4th through 8th grade math and then eventually transitioned into being a special education intervention specialist. So our kids were having to get bused to the public school to get their special education minutes because we didn't have a special education teacher that was hired at the school. So I was able to keep our kids on IEPs in our building to do their service minutes, and it was really awesome. So once I got my special ed license, I transitioned to Academy of Full Learning. It is the only school in the state of Minnesota that is specifically designed for students on the autism spectrum or with related disabilities. So it's a very awesome school. They're doing incredible things with kids with autism and similar disabilities. So I was their STEM specialist. I taught math classes. I did have a self-contained classroom. I had 9 boys and 1 girl, and I did language arts, social studies, science. We kind of did everything, but I was the math specialist for all the other teachers as well. So then we got stationed in Florida. I was not able to transfer my special ed license as quickly as I wanted when we moved to Florida. So I ended up taking a math job to kind of start out off with. To be honest, I intended on switching into special education, but I just fell in love with teaching high school math. It was a really good kind of brain switch, and I think career wise, it was really good just for the experience. So I was teaching AP Calc, AP Statistics, Algebra 2, a couple classes of intensified algebra. I got to serve as the mathematics department head at the high school. So I really got some strong leadership experience there. I got some really good content and instruction lessons and resources and professional development in that atmosphere. So transitioning to a public school and high school kids was a whole new ball game from my kind of private elementary background, but I loved it and it was really positive. And now we're in Geary County at Fort Riley. I teach at Junction City Middle. It is off post, and I am back in the special education world, and I'm a behavior specialist. I have a caseload full of kiddos who have some significant mental health concerns that kind of cause their behavior concerns. And so we kind of live in our social emotional wellness world, and I love it. So when we think about communication, I really love this topic because I think that communication and connection are essential to teaching. So I have done some research and some writing on what I like to call the language of growth mindset, and it's just all about how we talk to people. I've been reading some books on nonviolent communication by a really famous psychologist, and it's just really incredible to realize the impact that our words and our connections that we have with people, like how significant they actually are to meaningful and lasting relationships. So, some things that my district provides in terms of communication are kind of the standard. Our email, our phone, and our web-based tool that we use is called Schoology. So it's our platform where teachers can post assignments, offer any resources, connect with their students, they can chat, they can all that kind of stuff. So we do the twice a year parent teacher conferences as a more formal form of communication. We host open house events, especially at back to school time, to come in, meet teachers, get familiar with your building, things like that. Our district does have a website and does utilize newsletters to get information out kind of in the masses. We use mass text notification, which now with the coronavirus and kind of going virtual has been a really incredible tool. And something that's new to the district that I'm in now, Geary County, is these superintendent listening sessions. So what our superintendent does is he offers an hour for teachers to come in, to voice concerns, to talk about what they're doing at the district level, kind of some insider information. And it's actually a really positive tool. I've been to a couple, and I think it's a really great opportunity for stakeholders to feel connected and communicated with from kind of our who's who. So some things I personally use beyond what the district provides is I do end up texting with some of my parents, either through a texting app or through phone numbers. With behavior crisis happening in my room on a daily basis, kind of fast, immediate communication is important for me as a teacher. So I do end up using kind of a texting model sometimes. When I taught high school math, I used a platform called Edmodo. I really loved it. It was where I put all my class resources, I put all my notes, all my test reviews, I posted videos. It was kind of like we called it the Facebook of our classroom. So kids were really savvy to use it. They could use it on their phones, which was really important to me, things like that. And I've started using ClassTag a little bit. My daughter's teacher uses it. And again, it's kind of just like almost like social media for school. It resembles kind of a Facebook where you have posts and feeds, and it's kind of a useful tool. So things I've seen my colleagues use, so other teachers in my building utilize the SMORE newsletter. That's just a web-based platform where you can make a newsletter and email it out, so it's not hard print. I know some colleagues I've worked with in the past use YouTube. They have a YouTube channel. They post videos of themselves. They post videos of instruction, writing classroom newsletters, and using like those texting apps like I had mentioned earlier. So the tools we use, again, computers, I make a lot of phone calls. I think in this weird season we're in with this virus and moving to online, I've really noticed how many incredible websites and online platforms there are for communication. I mean, I've kind of done the standard stuff before, but with all the free subscriptions coming out of the woodwork, kind of, it's really cool to see just how available online learning is, which is encouraging because I think it's a very frightening time to consider how are we going to do what we do so well in person equally as well online. And while we might not do it equally as well, I think it's encouraging to know that there are just a lot of options that can fit our students, and it doesn't have to look the same for everyone, and that's kind of cool. So we use parent letters, and then we use quarterly progress reporting. So this is above just a report card, but we send updates on missing assignments. When their grade hits a certain level, we send notifications home. So lots of ways to communicate. I personally have an iPad in the classroom. It is my device personally, but we use it for robotics coding. We use it for, I have a Cricut machine in my classroom to print labels or for posters or images and things like that. So that's just a tool that I have used to communicate. My kids can make video reports with a lot of fine motor skills for special ed kids, making a video book report instead of writing a book report, things like that we'd use with my iPad. I use a lot of online forms. So I create a lot of forms and surveys that I use myself. So I have a form for every time I communicate with a parent. So I fill it out, who it was, what the date was, what the content was, what the follow-up needs to be. And then when I hit submit, it records it for me on a spreadsheet and it emails it to the parent. So it's just kind of a double fold. And I have different forms for who I taught, what lesson, since I'm differentiating so much throughout my day. So I personally use a lot of online forms to communicate with myself and communicate with my family in terms of exactly what's happening through our day. And then data collection is a huge piece of how I communicate with my family. So I collect 4 different data points every 10 minutes for every student of every day in my classroom. And so those of you who teach special ed probably understand some of that data collection mentality, but when I'm able to get these numbers, the numbers communicate a ton to me. So a tool of communication for me is data collection. I can see trends, I can see patterns, what's happening every Monday, what's happening during science every day, how's lunch going? And so that data collection says a lot to me and my parents. When I was reading the articles, here's some things that stood out to me. In one article, it said, when you get your introduction right, the opportunity is not only to genuinely connect with people, but you'll also be allowed to do the work you really want to do. So the key things I picked out about communication and introductions from this article were that it's important to say more about yourself than just who you are and what you do. That your title is important, but it's not as important as what you do with that title. And then being vulnerable to share that information with people. I mean, sometimes we kind of live in an age where sometimes there's there's personal and there's too personal, but to kind of in the professional world be willing to get vulnerable to create some opportunities. I'm fortunate that in my 10 years of teaching, I've never had a job I didn't fall in love with. But I also think it's because I worked hard to make connections and to really be open with people about what I wanted to do, what I felt like my gifts were. And I think that matches here perfectly. It allows us to do the work we really want to do. If we're not going beyond our title, if we're not being vulnerable, I think we get stuck in positions that we are just complacent with and not in love with. And so we can kind of extend who we are as teachers in that way. Another article said, you are what you believe in, your unique experiences, your struggles. You are your story, and that story is your value, your one-of-a-kind contribution to the world around you. I think the key points from this in terms of introductions and communication is to be who you are, be true to yourself. I think this is a lesson we try to teach our kids, especially being social skills oriented. Embrace who you really are. Don't try to be someone else for anyone else. The world needs you. So I think to tell that story and then to look for what problems we can solve. I think really identifying our skill set is important um, when we look at who we are and who we want to be. And then lastly, in the Gross article, it says, in essence, we make judgments of people we meet based on split-second reactions. We, even when presented with countervailing facts, hold on to our first impressions. So I think this just kind of indicates, this is a big social skills lesson I teach every year, is that to put your best foot forward right away. That first impressions really does matter. It's hard to erase, and undo things that we've done. And I think beyond first impressions too, it's like our every impression matters. I think we can all think of people that we valued and respected, but can kind of think of that one moment where like, they did that one thing we weren't super fond of. So I think that comes in that self-reflection is every moment thinking about who we want to be, how we want to be that person, and how that communicates to others in the way that we act and introduce ourselves. Um, so my district does have some guidelines in terms of communication. So they mostly outline professional communication. So in our school board policy, it does talk about, when teachers will reach out to you and when teachers won't. Some professional encounters, how we're supposed to interact with students during the school day. And we do have a parent handbook that kind of outlines some professional etiquette in terms of emailing, calling, things like that. We do have a social media policy. It's separate from our board policy and our parent handbook, and it outlines staff expectations, student expectation in terms of how we're using social media, keeping personal and professional private. How staff is not going to friend students. We're not going to, engage personally with students on social media, things like that. And then we do have our own building level expectations. So as a school, Our content teams and our administration have put out some expectations. Returning emails within 24 hours, returning phone calls within 24 hours, making a certain number of phone calls home every week, communicating D's and F's, things like that. So beyond what our district requires of our communication, our content teams and administration in our building have established some of those guidelines as well. So um, I think that this was a really good start to looking at these school and community relationships. I'm a huge proponent of relational learning, and I'm excited to continue on the course with all of you.